When I came and saw this parlor room, I realized Amelia's presence was right here, she is one of the biggest influences to this museum and the university. And so I just wanted to learn more about her, and I wanted to back it up with my existing knowledge of feminine artistic culture of this time and kind of recontextualize this space to make it more relatable to female audiences and let them learn and realize the changes that have been made in terms of women's experience from just a couple hundred years ago. My name is Olivia Sims. I am a graduate student here at UA pursuing a master's degree in art history, and I'm also in the museum studies track. I'm here at the Gorgas House Museum as a curatorial intern, and this is the final step into getting my degree. The title of my exhibit is The Ladies' Domain, 19th Century Parlor Room Culture, and it is essentially an interpretive exhibit of what it was like for a woman like Amelia Gorgas, or maybe her daughters, to live in the 19th century and participate and experience life in the parlor room. So that includes specific etiquette they had to know in terms of social events, just customs and practices that women would do in this space. Usually if a college student comes and visits the Gorgas House Museum, my first question is, have you ever been here? And usually their answer is no, and that they realize that they didn't know that they could come into this space. And then of course I'll reassure them, this is a museum, this is open for all students to come by, you're welcome to come by anytime. The first thing I like to introduce them to is that this house has been here almost as long as the university was founded, and that the Gorgas family played such an influential role in this university that not only is this museum named after them, dedicated to them, we even have the library across the street dedicated to Amelia Gorgas. And usually that's my way to segue into my exhibit, discussing feminine practices. And the first thing I like to show them in my exhibit when they come see this is the calling card. I always like to introduce that first to any college campus visitors, because back then that was their equivalent of social media. And I think every college student can relate to social media, especially today more than ever. And essentially these calling cards, they weren't exclusive to women, but women typically would use them when visiting others. And if that visitor wasn't there, they would leave their card and say, hey, I came to visit. How about you pay me a visit or try to write me? And it was also a way for women to hand off information to perhaps potential suitors or the family of a potential suitor. And even that social aspect was amplified in this room. Specifically, they would often display calling cards of visitors in the parlor room in a tray. And what they would do was actually display the most interesting or perhaps the most famous visitors they've had on the top of the stack. So when they'd have other visitors come by, they would be like, oh wow, so-and-so was here. Can you believe that? They came and visited y'all? And it was also a great way of starting up conversation. Women, specifically the daughters of the home, were tasked with creating albums or scrapbooks that would either display family events or trips or activities or accomplishments, or it could just simply be a photograph book of family members and friends. Jessie was the daughter of Amelia, and she was thus kind of tasked to collect, arrange, and assemble this book of family members. Looking through it during my research process, you were able to see Jessie's handwritten comments about the photographs and the people that were photographed in this book. So it's really showing that social aspect. So I have 2 QR codes as part of an interactive element to my exhibit. The first QR code you come in contact with is on the introductory panel. And it's essentially a way to diagram and map out social interactions, social connections, or even kinship networks of women's influence or women's participation in certain groups. And I felt that that would have been a really cool project to incorporate in my exhibit. So I did. I started off with Amelia Gorgas as the center of this network of influence, and I kind of started researching from there. I was really interested in learning how her influence as a woman living in the Gorgas house, mainly independent for most of her life, how she influenced people around her in the university and beyond. I was also interested in finding who influenced her to become such a historical woman we know today, and I was able to find some really interesting information about her upbringing and her mother. And not only her mother, her stepmother, and her mother's best friend helped raise her. There were 3 slaves that helped her in her childhood and helped raise her to the woman she is today. So I include that in that diagram. And also this QR code we have for the hand fan exhibit kind of gives more information about that myth of the secret language of hand fans, and it just adds a little bit more historical context to this exhibit as well. I wanted to consider some sort of interactive element to this exhibit, and I thought it would be really fun to have some sort of interactive where people could actually engage with the material and kind of immerse themselves into this culture. It is popularly known that women of the South would often use hand fans, especially before the invention of air conditioning, and they would use those to cool themselves off. But there was also this mythology that there was this secret language behind hand fans and the certain gestures that go behind that. And it's been widely disputed amongst historians, but I thought it was still a really interesting concept and idea that originated from the 19th century, and it really applied well to this exhibit. I give the visitors a chance to actually create what I call a souvenir of Southern feminine history, in which they can create their own hand fan. My specialization has been specifically in Victorian female artistic circles based in England. So I have a huge knowledge of English societal customs and practices for women during that time, but it is definitely a little different here in America, and especially in the South. I had already had knowledge of etiquette books for women, which were essentially guides on how to act and how to behave in social circumstances, especially here in the parlor room. However, in Southern America, their etiquette books were often combined with their cookbooks. So not only are you learning recipes of Southern home cooking, but you're also learning while you're cooking how to act and how to display the food and how to serve the food. But it even went more than that, how to greet guests when they come into this space or how to properly leave a space. So it was really interesting to learn more of the Southern attitudes, and kind of really gives you a better understanding of that Southern hospitality that we still are known for today.